August 23, 2000. A routine flight, a clear night, a tragedy waiting to unfold. On a warm summer evening, Gulf Air Flight 072 took off from Cairo, bound for Bahrain. 143 souls aboard, filled with hopes, dreams and plans for tomorrow. But in the final moments of their journey, a cascade of errors, a battle with disorientation and a series of ignored warnings would lead to one of the deadliest aviation disasters in Bahrain's history. This is the story of Gulf Air Flight 072, a tale of human error, systemic failures and lessons carved in tragedy. On August 23, 2000, the late afternoon sun cast a golden glow over Cairo International Airport, Egypt's bustling aviation hub. Gulf Air Flight 072, a scheduled international passenger service, was preparing for its journey to Bahrain International Airport in Muharraq, Bahrain. The aircraft, an Airbus A320 with registration A40EK, was a modern, reliable workhorse delivered new to Gulf Air in September 1994. Powered by two CFM International engines, it had logged 17,870 hours across 13,990 takeoff and landing cycles. Its most recent maintenance, conducted just days earlier on August 17th, confirmed compliance with all airworthiness directives. To all appearances, the plane was in pristine condition. The flight carried 143 souls, 135 passengers, 2 pilots and 6 cabin crew members, representing 17 nationalities, predominantly Egyptians and Bahrainis. Among the passengers were 61 men, 37 women and 37 children, including 8 infants. Many were Egyptian teachers and their families returning to Bahrain after summer holidays. In the cockpit, Captain Ihsan Shakib, a 37-year-old Bahraini, assumed command. Shakib had joined Gulf Air as a trainee engineer in 1979, earning his pilot's license in 1992 and amassing 6,856 flight hours, well above the airline's 4,000-hour minimum for captains. Promoted to captain just 4 months earlier, he was experienced but relatively new to the role. His co-pilot, First Officer Khalaf Al-Alawi, a 25-year-old Omani, was less seasoned, with 608 hours of flying experience, 408 on the A320. Al-Alawi had joined Gulf Air as a cadet pilot in 1999 and was promoted to First Officer in 2000. The two men, though from neighboring nations, were bound by shared responsibility of safely guiding their passengers across the Arabian Peninsula. At 4:52 p.m. local time, Flight 072 departed Cairo, climbing into the clear evening sky. The flight plan was straightforward: a roughly 3-hour journey southeast over the Red Sea, Saudi Arabia, and the Persian Gulf to Bahrain. The weather forecast promised clear skies with no significant turbulence or adverse conditions. For all intents and purposes, this was a routine flight. As Flight 072 neared Bahrain, the crew prepared for landing at Bahrain International Airport. The approach was to be a VOR DME procedure to runway 12, requiring the pilots to navigate toward a radar beacon at the airport on a heading of 121 degrees, descending to specific altitudes based on their distance from the runway. While VOR DME approaches can be challenging in poor weather, the night was clear, with hardly a cloud over the Persian Gulf. Visibility was excellent and the runway lights should have been visible from miles away. At 7:22 p.m., the MEM approach control cleared Flight 072 for self-navigation to land on runway 02. But First Officer Al-Alawi soon contacted Bahrain approach, confirming they would land on runway 12. The aircraft was descending, but its speed was unusually high, initially 313 knots, around 580 km per hour, slowing to 272 knots, around 504 km per hour. Standard operating procedures dictated lower speeds to ensure a stable approach, but Captain Shakib maintained the elevated velocity, perhaps confident in his ability to manage the descent manually. As the Airbus approached the final approach fix, it was still at 1,800 feet, too high for a stable landing, and traveling too fast to fully extend the flaps, which provide critical lift for low-speed flight. The A320's 5 flap settings each have speed limits to prevent damage, and the crew was grappling with the flaps of a speed warning. At approximately 1 nautical miles from touchdown, at an altitude of about 600 feet, the crew requested a left-hand orbit, a 360-degree turn to realign with the runway. Air traffic control approved the maneuver, but it was non-standard procedure, especially at such low altitude and high speed. The orbit took Flight 072 beyond the runway's extended centerline, heading southwest. The aircraft was now misaligned too high and too fast. Realizing the approach was unsustainable, Captain Shakib initiated a go-around, applying takeoff thrust to climb and attempt another approach. The aircraft crossed the runway on a northeasterly heading, climbing shallowly to about 1,000 feet. Air traffic control offered radar vectors to guide the plane back, which the crew accepted, but the situation was deteriorating rapidly. As the go-around began, the aircraft accelerated, triggering a master warning for flap overspeed. The crew's focus on this issue likely distracted them from maintaining proper control. A perceptual study later conducted as part of the investigation revealed that Captain Shakib likely experienced a somatographic illusion, a form of spatial disorientation common in low visibility or dark conditions. When an aircraft accelerates rapidly, the pilot's vestibular system can misinterpret the forward motion as a pitch-up, causing the pilot to instinctively push the nose down to compensate. Over the pitch-black expanse of the Persian Gulf, with no horizon or visual references, Shakib may have believed the aircraft was climbing excessively when it was not. Instead of pulling up to maintain the climb, Shakib made a significant nose-down input, causing the aircraft to descend at 15-degree angle. The ground proximity warning system activated, blaring pull up repeatedly 10 times in total. Standard operating procedures mandated an immediate pitch-up response to such warnings, a reaction drilled into pilots through rigorous training. Yet neither Shakib nor Al-Alawi reacted appropriately. Fixated on flaps overspeed and overwhelmed by disorienting conditions, they maintained the nose-down input, ignoring the ground proximity warning system alarms. Simulator trials later showed that had Shakib pulled up within 2 seconds of the first ground proximity warning system warning, the crash could have been avoided. But the aircraft continued its descent, traveling at 280 knots, around 520 miles per hour, with a 6.5-degree nose-down pitch. At 7:30 p.m., just 1 minute after initiating the go-around, Flight 072 slammed into the shallow waters of the Persian Gulf, 2 kilometers northeast of the airport. The high-speed impact tore the Airbus apart, scattering debris across the seafloor. All 143 passengers and crew were killed instantly. The crash site, in waters only 3 meters deep, was quickly located, but hope of survivors was non-existent. The Bahraini government mobilized the Coast Guard and Civil Defense Agency, while the US Navy's 5th Fleet, stationed in Manama, provided critical support. Within days, all bodies were recovered, though not all were immediately identified. The flight data recorder and cockpit voice recorder were retrieved and sent to Washington, D.C. for analysis on August 27th. Preliminary findings confirmed the crew's struggle to control the aircraft. The final accident investigation report, issued on August 15, 2002 by the Bahrain Accident Investigation Board, painted a sobering picture of cascading failures. The primary cause was pilot error, exacerbated by spatial disorientation. Captain Shakib's non-adherence to standard operating procedures, maintaining excessive speed, conducting a low-altitude orbit, and ignoring ground proximity warning system warnings was central to the disaster. First officer's Al-Alawi's inexperience and failure to intervene compounded the issue. A lack of crew resource management training meant the pilots did not effectively communicate or challenge each other's actions. Systemic issues were equally damning. Gulf's air training program was found deficient, particularly in preparing pilots for ground proximity warning system responses and controlled flight into terrain scenarios. The airline's oversight of safety regulations was lax, and pilots, including Shakib and Al-Alawi, were not rigorously compliant with standard operating procedures. The investigation concluded that no single factor caused the crash. Rather, it was a fatal combination of many contributory factors, both at individual and systemic levels. The crash of Gulf Air Flight 072 sent shockwaves through Bahrain, a small nation unaccustomed to such tragedy. 3 days of national mourning were declared, and grieving families gathered in Cairo and Manama seeking answers. The disaster, Bahrain's deadliest aviation accident, also marked the highest death toll of an Airbus A320 at the time, a grim record later surpassed by TAM Airlines Flight 3054 in 2007. Gulf Air responded with sweeping reforms. The airline enhanced pilot training, emphasizing spatial disorientation, crew resource management, and ground proximity warning system response protocols. Fatigue management programs were introduced to ensure rested crews. Stricter enforcement of standard operating procedures and improved regulatory oversight aimed to rebuild a culture of safety. The story of Flight 072 is a stark reminder of aviation's unforgiving nature. Small errors, when compounded, can lead to catastrophe. More than 2 decades later, the lessons of Flight 072 endure. Advances in pilot training, automation, and safety protocols have reduced the likelihood of similar accidents, but the human element remains aviation's greatest strength and vulnerability. The 143 lives lost in the Persian Gulf serve as a solemn call to vigilance, ensuring that such a tragedy never occurs.